welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. This is Garth Ennis. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, Andrew. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, mate. Very well indeed. I'm looking forward to our conversation, which is about a mutual love of ours, the great Rogue Trooper, in which your recent Rogue Trooper series, Blighty Valley, is just being collected. So, how did you find the reaction to what you guys did?
It was very gratifying. I think what came through the strongest was people reacted to it as something that could fit neatly into the old Rogue Trooper run, and I think it was written and drawn deliberately that way. I mean that first 3-year run in 2000 from 81 to 84, that has a special place in my heart. And when I was writing Rogue, that was something I wanted to bring out. I wanted it to fit into that run quite well in terms of the characters, in terms of the way they handle themselves, in terms of their reactions, as opposed to something that might be seen as an update, something that's been modernized, for want of a better word. I think if you're going to go back and do one of these old characters, particularly if it's something with a checkered history like Rogue Trooper, you want to go back to the original and you want to bring out the things that made it great. And that's hopefully what Paddy and I were able to do.
Yeah, I think that's undoubtedly true. Before we get into the unusual, before we get into the premise of your Rogue Trooper story, I mean, you took those decisions with Paddy about the color scheme, which fits in with exactly with what you were saying. Were you both on board with that from the get-go? Did you get any pushback on that?
Not at all. I think, as I recall, Matt Smith, the current Tharg, was very enthusiastic about the idea. I think he liked something that would work in the terms I've described, and Paddy was more than happy to do it. I think a good deal of his work for 2000 AD has appeared in black and white. Savage,
yes,
was black and white, and it ran for several series. So he was more than happy to do it that way, and it's been really nice to see his stuff succeed that way. When I look at Paddy's work, while he's very definitely his own man, I see classic 2000 AD in there. I see Gibbons. I see a bit of Wilson. I even a bit of Kennedy and a bit of Ewan's, that the ingredients that made the classic Rogue strip such a success on the artistic side of things. So Paddy in a way helps me kind of channel that, like, because I know what I'm gonna get. He's about 4 episodes into the next one, which I think starts running in 2000 in September.
Yeah.
And he's just doing tremendous work, but it has that same classic quality to it, with a dash of Paddy's own originality too.
So you're in the middle of the joy zone at the moment, where you're getting your pages over and seeing what he's doing, seeing your script turned into that glorious art.
Yeah.
That I know just from being an editor what an amazing feeling that is. But for you, it must be brilliant.
It really is. I mean, it's, to this day, it remains my favorite part of the process on any project. The art comes in and you see what the artist has done with your script, the choices they've made, and got a bit of an embarrassment of riches at the moment anyway, because I've got Paddy, I've got Keith on Johnny Red, Higgins is doing Dredger, Becky Cloonan's doing a strip for me, Jason Burrows is drawing one for me. So I'm regularly getting this fantastic art on all these different scripts, and it's a real pleasure. It's like I say, it's still the biggest joy in the entire process.
Mate, I mean, if you look back on your life and your own personal appreciation for and love of the entire 2000 AD universe, you know, the way that your career has ended up leveraging a degree of influence over that pantheon, that must feel amazing. You know, that must be like if you had hopes for yourself when you started writing comics, I imagine that would have been one of them, even if it wasn't clearly expressed in your mind. So to be in that place now, operationally must feel really good.
It really is. I mean, to add something to the kind of legend of Rogue Trooper, to be able to sort of think back to the classic stories that I love, like Eye of the Traitor or Fort Nero or Major Magnum or You Only Die Twice, and think that you're writing something that fits in there, hopefully, is a real treat. And likewise, it's nice to pop in now and again and do something shorter, like Bonjo with Kevin O'Neill and last year's Dread Robo Hunter crossover. Just shorts.
Yeah.
But lots of fun. I mean, you will see a couple more of those.
Right.
Henry Flint's working on a couple of those for me at the moment.
Yeah.
Just little things, but lots of fun to do.
Just to take a side trip just for a second, have you got any more plans for Hawk the Slayer? Is there any chance of any more of that coming?
Not from me.
Yeah.
That for me was one and done, really. It
Yeah,
was
got it.
everything I had to say on the character, everything I'd been thinking about the last 40 years. But I believe 2000 AD are doing another series within the Progue. I think it's, if I've got this right, it's Alec Worley and Simon Colby, I think. I believe that starts running soon. And, I suppose it's probably going to follow on from the story I did with Henry. But so, yeah, lots of fun on Hawk, but really, that was everything I had to say on it.
Yeah, I mean, because you've got quite a history of when it comes to characters that you haven't created yourself, are doing this thing of revitalizing it, kind of throwing the bomb down, going back to ground zero, rebuilding it, starting it again, and often having that moment where it's like, right, that's what I've got to say about this character, and then it gets passed off to others. As you say,
Yeah.
Hawkslayer is one of those. The Shadow was one of those. I loved your Shadow mini. I'm a huge Shadow fan, as I think we talked about at the time. But then, once you'd done your 5 or 6 issues, you were done with that. It was there for everybody else to run off with.
Yeah. I mean, in some cases, you're doing stuff that you're happy to drop in and out of, really for the foreseeable. Rogue Trooper is one of them. Battle Action is obviously one of those. Hawk was more one where it was just something I had to get out of my system, and then it was done.
Yeah.
Because sometimes these things just won't go away until you scratch the itch.
Well, I mean, I remember years ago when we were working on Battle of Britain. I mean, you were talking about doing Johnny Red then, and no doubt you've been talking about doing it for ages beforehand. And back then, it was a case of the rights were so blown apart everywhere.
Yeah.
That we had the right at IPC, we could do Battle of Britain, but we couldn't do Johnny Red, and it was all of that. I think the brilliance of what's happened at Rebellion is the way they've pulled all of those characters together. The Treasury of British Comic stuff. They are doing everything I wanted to do 20 years ago and couldn't, simply because it wouldn't work from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
But that gives you more domain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Rebellion, their philosophy, it's a nice illustration of that idea that everything happens eventually, or everything can happen eventually. It's just sitting there waiting for someone to light the fuse. Here I am writing Johnny Red. Again, there's still a part of me that's quite shocked at that, quite surprised that that was able to happen to a character that had lain fallow for 30, 35 years, something like that. But as I say, if you get an outfit like Rebellion who are good at seeing the potential and then realizing it, yes, all your dreams can come true.
Right on. That's fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of those dreams, to go back to like amplifying on them and turn them into something, can you just, for anybody who hasn't thus far been oriented to what is going on in Blighty Valley, can you talk about the premise?
Sure. So Rogue Trooper, for those who don't know, is a future warrior. He's a soldier on the war planet New Earth, which is really at the center of a galaxy-wide war. It's it's poisoned chemically and atomically. Rogue is unique in that he, as part of the genetic infantry, can survive in a nuclear, bacterial, chemical environment without bulky protective suits. He's also unique in that he's the last of his kind. The Genetic Infantry Regiment were wiped out in the famous Quartz Zone massacre, and now Rogue wanders the poisoned plains of New Earth, searching for the traitor who sold out his regiment. In Blighty Valley, Rogue's search is interrupted when he finds himself on another battlefield, on another planet, on another time. He's transported by means best known to the plot to Flanders in 1918, when the British army is in full retreat from the German army, who suddenly look as if they might have a shot at winning World War I. And Rogue finds himself in the middle of this particular maelstrom. He finds many differences between this conflict and the one he knows, but also many similarities in terms of what the participants have to put up with and the challenges they face. And he finds, I think you could say that he finds enough about the conflict that's familiar that he starts to realize something about the inevitability of war, maybe about it, about that never-ending quality that it unfortunately has.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's very well said and very well summarized. And of course, the beauty of it is, you know, for those Ennis readers out there who particularly love your classic war tales, be it World War One, World War Two, what have you, and the more futuristic stuff that you've done, it's a brilliant confluence of the two things. So, you know, you're roping in a couple of areas, you know, that you've very competently mined in the past.
Well, I hope so. Normally I'm a little edgy about joining war stories, actual historical conflict, with fantasy elements, which technically Rogue Trooper is. It's a science fiction story. But given that it's a war story, and a very nasty, bloody, down-to-earth war story, without too many fantastical elements, I think they make a good match. Anyone who knows the Rogue Trooper strip can tell you that although when you find out that the two sides are the Norts and the Southers, that sounds a little bit like North and South, like the American Civil War. But you pretty soon realize that in terms of the tone of the thing and the look and the way the technology's been extrapolated from things we know, that what you're really looking at is a kind of World War II in space, maybe with a bit of the Cold War, a bit of Vietnam. And I think that gives Rogue Trooper and the conflict on New Earth enough of a familiar feel that it works as a match for some actual historical conflicts that we'd be more familiar with.
Yeah. That, I think that's also well said, and it's being collected, and the collection is available for pre-order at the links attached to our conversation, and now, of course, you're working on your next Rogue Trooper tale. Is there anything you can tell me about that?
I can tell you that it is called When a GI Dies. It is set on New Earth. It again slots into the original Rogue Trooper run, a bit more neatly this time. One of my favorite stories, possibly my favorite, from the 81 to 84 Rogue Trooper run was called You Only Die Twice. It's worth noting that although Rogue is technically the last surviving GI, he carries with him, clipped into his equipment, the biochips of 3 of his dead friends. These are computer chips carried in the brain of every genetic infantry soldier. They can be removed at the point of death. They contain a record of that soldier's personality. And eventually, all being well, they can be returned to Millicom, which is the Souther's galactic base where the chip can be put into a new body and that man can live on. The idea is that his knowledge, his training, and really just his status as a genetically engineered soldier makes him so valuable that any chance to allow him to continue so that he isn't lost for all time on the battlefield is worth taking. Anyway, in You Only Die Twice, one of Rogue's buddies, Gunnar, the guy whose chip is clipped into his rifle, is apparently destroyed. Gunnar then returns in a new body with all sorts of enhancements. He's stronger, faster than Rogue. He has telekinesis. Unfortunately, he's also been programmed to kill Rogue for some reason. And as this plays out in the story, you find out that a serious attempt has been made to assassinate Rogue Trooper, who's seen perhaps as an embarrassment to elements of the Souther establishment. Now, anyone who's read the story can tell you that there's an enormous amount that was never explained, and that the following week, after the last episode appeared, things just continued as pretty much as normal, as if nothing had ever happened. Gunnar's back, Chip is back in the rifle, and Rogue just continues his quest. And I had so many questions about this, about what might have happened to Gunnar and how he was brainwashed, and what whoever it was agenda really was as regards Rogue, that I suppose goes back to what we were talking about earlier. These things stay with you, and you have to scratch the itch. And the questions you have about an existing story spark ideas for your own. And that's what my story is about. When a GI dies, it's a look at what happened to Gunnar. It's a look at what happens after the story and the repercussions for Rogue, but also for the Southers on Millicom. And it's quite a creepy story. A lot of it has to do with what happens to these guys when their bodies are destroyed, but they live on essentially as personalities recorded on computer chips slotted into equipment, and what that would be like, and what happens, of course, to the GIs that weren't lucky enough to be saved. So it looks at a lot of these aspects of genetic infantry lore, you might say, in the middle of quite an action-packed story.
Mate, you are selling the fuck out of this story. You should be a writer. I'm telling you, that is a great pitch. I can't wait to read that. That's amazing. So there you have it. You know, they have not only is Blighty Valley a fantastic piece of work and does something, I think, quite different versus the Rogue Trooper stories I've read and loved over past years. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what you did with it. I can't wait to see more with the next story. And if that isn't the best trailer for the next story, I don't know what isn't. So Blighty Valley, Rogue Trooper Blighty Valley, can be bought from the links attached to our conversation. And Garth, I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. We're going to talk about a few more elements of the Rebellion universe. So until then, mate, you take care of yourself.
You too. Cheers.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.